So we're coming towards the end of the day, so I thought we'll try and keep it live, try and keep it quick, because I've got 20 minutes, so I'll be quite quick. Jump in if you feel as though you want to at any point in time. I tend to walk, so please do keep an eye on me in case I walk out the door if it's not going too well. So let me talk to you a little bit about, and I need to get the clicker, what I'm going to discuss today. I'm the General Counsel. I don't have a clicker. Anyone have a clicker? I'm the General Counsel for the Regions team at Network Rail. Thank you very much. I'm not going to talk to you about Network Rail, because you can all look that up and see what the Regions team does. What I want to talk to you about is a once-in-a-generation opportunity, OK? Now, you may think I'm exaggerating, and I've been told 150 million times that I exaggerate, and I don't accept that. But on this occasion, I'm not. And why do I say that? Because at the moment, we're about to change from where the LPC, which is the traditional route into the profession, is disappearing. It's going to be replaced by the SQE. Training contracts, as we know them, are going to be disappearing too, and that gives the profession a huge opportunity to do something different. And what I want to talk to you about today is, are we going to seize that opportunity and do something a bit different, or are we going to just simply allow the same thing to continue as it has done for the last 30 years, as the LPC has done the same thing? So what I want to just describe is probably the kind of typical lawyer I see coming through, both in-house and in private practice, and it's my observations. This isn't anyone else's thoughts in terms of Network Rail. This is my observations of the professional people we see. We train and develop people into a very technical way as it stands. We kind of one-track people through law school, we one-track them then through a training contract, and then we expect something very different of them as they move up the ranks within a private practice firm. Many of them then come in-house, and we have a very different perspective on how we want our people to work as well. And it seems really odd, given that we're really here for the same purpose, to give a great service to our customers. That's why we exist. And there's a study done in Princeton University in the States. And what that did was it mapped a load of professions, and it said in these professions, they've got a competency level on the horizontal axis, and they've got a warmth column as well. And they map these, and I'll show you in a minute. And the reason I'm not showing it right now is because you'll start looking at that and not me, and I'd be upset by that. What that does is it shows just how technical lawyers are in terms of the broad professions that it looks at. And it shows just how weak the legal profession is in terms of what it describes as warmth, and I describe here as kind of trust, the human side of what we do. So let me show you it now, and you can give me your own view, and we'll see how many people start to pick out other things. You can see there in the bottom right-hand corner, that's where the lawyer is. Highly competent, OK? Highly competent. Warmth-wise, we're not so good. And in fact, you'll notice in the bottom left, there are other professions, the oldest profession of them all, that happens to be pretty close on a par in terms of warmth. So what I classify as trust the human side. And I saw something recently that was called Smarts and Hearts. So this was from a CEO who was, at the time, in Silicon Valley. And he was running some of the bigger companies in Silicon Valley. And he started saying, in order to build the best businesses we possibly can, we need to be hiring smarts and hearts. So this idea that just having the smartest technical people will get you where you want is insufficient. We need to start bringing in people who can bring themselves to the workplace, who are able to be the people they want to be and bring that kind of, they described as love. We'd probably be a bit more careful in this country describing it as love into the office. But that's what he was talking about. Now, when I talk about human factors, I want to give you a bit of an example. It's not quite love, but it's an example of what I see and I think happens every day, and I wonder whether or not you have a similar take on this. I was at a team away day about 3 years ago, and we went to the bunker in Uxbridge. I don't know if people are familiar with an RAF bunker. And this RAF bunker was where the Battle of Britain was operated from. They've got the operating room in there. So if anyone has seen World War II movies, you'll see these big rooms with a big table in front of them and a map of the country on it. And on those movies, you'll see model aircraft and people pushing them across the table. I don't know whether people are familiar with the kind of thing I'm talking about. And we had the curator there telling us about this wonderful establishment 30 feet under the ground, where Winston Churchill went on several occasions and actually said that famous speech about not how many in the field of human conflict has so much been owed by so many to so few. That's where he first said it. And the curator's talking us through this and building up this kind of momentum. And after he finished telling us about these wonderful speeches that Winston Churchill has said, he then asked us, 50 lawyers in there, he said, how does that make you feel? What is it that your reaction is to that? And someone put their hand up. They put their hand up and they said, yes, see that table you've got in the middle? They go, yeah. You know Birmingham is spelt wrong. And it was kind of like, goodness gracious, he was spot on technically, it had no H. So absolutely bang on the money technically, but in the context, it was completely wrong, okay? And I see that kind of example happening day in, day out, where we've got brilliant people, brilliantly smart people, focusing on what's right in front of their eyes and not seeing the bigger picture out there, okay? So when I talk about lawyers being technicians, we see it every single day of the week. It's something that we find in private practice and we find in-house. So this is where we are absolutely in it together. But you may say, so what? Because we've already heard today, and I won't spend much time, there's a monopoly over the way in which we're earning money in this profession. You can see it's a £35 billion industry. The top 100 are responsible for 2/3 of that. GCs have never had a higher profile than they have now, on the board, strategically involved. So you may say, Dan, all very well, technical has done the job for so long, why bother changing now? And in truth, well, all we hear about is change. Frankly, we're hearing a lot about it today, and it's got to be right that we do, because all of these things are playing a role. We know, and we've heard today, so I won't labour the point, around new players in the market, whether that's from resourcing options that GCs now have, flexibly, whether it is from the big four that are coming in. All sorts of different options are available to these sophisticated buyers of legal services. And that's why we see a real desire for change. Technology and ops playing a big role in driving change in this profession. And of course, societal elements. We've heard about D&I just now, but we know that that's a real driver for a necessary change. And the other one, that I don't know if has had a mention today, but around the mental health of this profession, which is actually appalling, frankly, overall, and we all need to take a good look at ourselves and think, how can we make this better? So there are huge societal issues that are driving change. And many of you will see this booklet in front of you, and this booklet, I think, describes this. I think it's this one, the Lawyer magazine, saying change must come and must come quickly. And this is from September this year. And this is people, maybe some of them are in the room, attended this round table, talking about the need for change in this industry. Now, I've probably seen that 5 years ago, so we know the pace of change in this industry isn't quick enough, but I'm not so worried about that for the minute. What I'm worried about is, are we changing the right things? Are we looking to change the things that will make the difference, not just for now, not just for the next 12 months, but sustainably for the next 10, 20 years? So when I look at changing the game, I think where we're getting to is a situation where we need to be looking at how we deliver these services, not what we're delivering. Our customers. So our customers, or clients, as law firms refer to us, and as how we describe our people in the business as customers, they are the people we serve. We exist to serve them, both of us, in-house, private practice. We are customer service businesses or customer service teams. That's our job, okay? However we like to describe ourselves, that is what we do. Now, our customers have never turned around to me and said, Dan, that was brilliant interpretation of a piece of legislation. I've got to tell you, I have never seen a contract interpreted that well since I've been doing this job. They don't care about the technical side. And I know this might be difficult standing in front of many lawyers, but they don't care too much for the technical side of the law. What they want is a service, and their service that they want is people who genuinely care about their problem and genuinely want to help them solve that problem. Knowing the customer is a lot of what I've heard today, or understanding the client. I've heard that a lot. And I can tell you, honestly, I don't think we're anywhere near it. And that's coming from my own perspective internally, that's spent the last 3 years in my role driving a real attempt to understand our customer. I had a one-to-one with the CEO for the first time a couple of weeks ago, okay? I don't report into the CEO, so this is a big thing for me, and I was nervous. First thing he said to me when I got in there, I didn't want to talk about this. He said, you know, it's interesting, Dan, this whole legal profession stuff. You know, I've worked with lawyers over the time. In my view, the legal team, if you want something not to be done, go to legal. Or procurement, he said as well, but that's a different topic, and we can deal with that in the next one. Now, how much did that hurt me? Really badly, because I think we really strive to understand our customer. And if we're struggling with it, then law firms can only be struggling even more, given that you're one step removed. So how do we make sure that we are delivering a service to our customers? How they have that service, not what matters to them. It matters that we have the hearts as well as the smarts. Please don't forget that if there's one thing you remember. Efficiency. So we've heard a lot about efficiency, particularly around technology. So I'm a big fan of efficiency. I'm a big fan of removing waste from a system. But it's not the end game. Technology is not going to be the answer to all the issues. When you've got something that's really inefficient, you make it more efficient, yes, it will save money. But again, I don't think customers are overly concerned about cost if the value and the service is what they want. If they feel like they're getting a great service, they won't be so concerned about the cost. I wouldn't tell my CFO that, but I'm telling you. There's another thing about efficiency that troubles me, because it can only go so far. I don't know if anyone is familiar with a book called Team of Teams. Now, Team of Teams is about a 5-star US general called Stanley McChrystal, and he went in to lead the US Army after Iraq and when Al-Qaeda had started to take hold in the Middle East. And what Stanley McChrystal knew when he came into that team was it was the most efficient, lean, green fighting machine at the time. It had everything, all the resources you can imagine. It had all the tools you can imagine. It had the people, it had the hardware, the software. It had it all. And yet it was losing the war against Al-Qaeda. It had no obvious leadership, no obvious network. It had no obvious way of working. And yet they were losing. Not just losing, losing really badly. And everyone looked at themselves and wondered why. And in came Stanley McChrystal and completely changed the way in which the US Army operated. However efficient they were, it wasn't sufficient in order to meet the disruption that was happening elsewhere and the battle that they were fighting. Now, I'm not trying to compare disruptors in this industry to Al-Qaeda, of course. But what I'm saying is that there's a similarity here between relying too much on technology and efficiency to be the answer. It is not the only answer. It may well help, but it has only got so far it can possibly run. So what is the answer for me, or certainly a large part of it, is that we start to put people at the heart of everything we do. Now, I like people. I think people, I'd like to think some of them like me, but we just don't know. People are absolutely the primary asset, probably the most expensive asset that any law firm has, key asset as far as my team is concerned, and yet I don't think we put them sufficiently at the heart of what we do. And I'm going to explain that a little bit more because I think people will be sitting there and say, of course we do, our people are the most important asset, therefore we look after them a huge amount. People have talked a lot in the past about the I-shaped lawyer and the T-shaped lawyer. So the I-shaped lawyer and the T-shaped lawyer are this concept that you have very technical expertise, a deep technical expertise, and you also have this horizontal, which is the kind of ability to work across boundaries, work with different experts across boundaries, and bring your different expertise together to solve problems. Hopefully, that's a concept that people are aware of, but if not, I'm hoping I've explained it sufficiently. So I sat down with our group GC and I said, we're looking to hire someone. And this idea of the T-shaped lawyer came up. And we said, do we want someone with these skills? And we said, yeah, absolutely. But it said, really, what we're looking for is a bit more than that. We want an all-rounder, someone with all-rounder skills. And alphabetically, really, that is more O-shaped, frankly. And it started as a bit of a quip, the idea that we want someone who is an all-rounder because that's what our customers demand from us, not someone that is just really brilliant with the law because they don't care, and not someone who is just even able to talk to other people across boundaries. They want all-rounders, people that get them, understand them, and care about them. So up came the O-shaped lawyer and started to think, well, what does this person actually look like? What's this person that's going to be the leader of our profession going forward and will lead the industry going forward? And so where we landed on was this. We said that these people have got the breadth, they've got the depth, but they're also open. We've heard this word used a couple of times today. And when I say open, I mean open in terms of their mindset, open in terms of new ideas, being open to those new ideas, being open in how they feel. Imagine that going into the workplace and being able to openly share in a safe space how you feel. Because traditionally, and what I see in the legal world, are people who are of a fixed mindset. Anyone that read Carol Dweck's work on growth mindset and fixed mindset will be familiar with the concept that people who are fixed mindset are just really good at what they do and they don't want to step out of that comfort zone because once they do, they risk failure. And lawyers are not used to failure. We've been brought through a system that effectively means we have to pass certain things at certain times and we're successful people. And the idea of being able to fail is not a concept that lawyers are very good with. So we need people who are open to the idea of failure because failure is the only way we're ever going to get successful. WD-40, anyone familiar with WD-40 as a product? WD-40 is called WD-40 because the first 39 attempts to get it right failed. Okay? And there are probably a myriad of other things that we can describe about failure being a really important way to learn and grow. So these people are open. These people are also opportunists. People are starting to see a trend here. Opportunists. So they are people who see and seize opportunities. Once again, if we are head down, buried in understanding how you spell Birmingham, we ain't going to see the opportunities that are around us. I had a year out of the legal team a few years ago and I spent a year on secondment. in a central project team. And I knew the program director pretty well before we started. And I said to him, this program that you're running, I'd really like to be able to be part of it. And he said to me, do you know what, Dan, we don't need a lawyer. And I said, how about I did it as a person? And he said, oh, yeah, that might work. That might actually work. Yeah, go on, we'll give you a go. And so that year was spent because I'd taken that opportunity, but you have to make the opportunities. And people who sit there saying, I don't get opportunities, that's why. Because people don't get out of where they are, they stay in their safe place, and they don't take opportunities. These people are original in their thinking, they're creative people. We know that being adaptable is going to be a huge, huge advantage going forward with all the disruption going on in our industry. It's critical that these people can think differently. At the moment, how do lawyers traditionally think? In a very one-track mind, because that's how we've trained and developed them to be able to do what they do brilliantly, and that stifles creativity. And that might hurt people sitting here, and it hurts me because I'm probably part of the problem. But we are not untapping the potential of people that come to our industry who are bright-eyed, bushy-tails, want to change the world, and yet we stick them for 2 years dealing with photocopying, dealing with proofreading, whatever else it takes, because the prize at the end is huge. The qualifying salaries are huge. That's what's the attraction, a big glitzy office in London. We are not training people for the future with that demand and disruption. Finally on this, there's two more actually, ownership. So ownership is one I actually added in quite recently because this is a problem I'm seeing more and more of, which is lawyers not taking accountability. So I see far too much lawyers giving advice and then stepping back and saying, there's your advice, business, off you go. Actually, what do customers really want? They want you to be there solving the problem with them. They don't want you to simply say, there's your advice, good luck. And I've seen it happen in-house and I've seen it happen in private practice. We spend too much time covering our own backsides rather than delivering value. And the amount of emails I see, traffic I see, which is effectively backside covering, really is quite painful. I suppose one way of looking at it is the way lawyers tend to work and we work is if we were at school, you were doing a maths exam, you always had to show you're working, didn't you, before you got to the answer. And if you just had the answer right, that wasn't sufficient because you hadn't shown how you got there. We don't need that anymore. We're not at school anymore. These people just want the answer. And finally here, and I think probably most importantly, is optimistic. Unfortunately, because of the way in which we develop people in a very risk-averse way, we look to try and find 100 problems, we create this very negative approach in people. And what I would really like to see, and what actually is, according to Simon Sinek, if people follow him, he says that optimism really is the foundation for human progress. We've got to start believing in ourselves that we can make this change happen, because at the moment, we fear change far too much as a profession. Hence the reason why we're still operating in the same way we have been for the last 30 years. So what we're going to do about it, because in America, we're seeing these kind of things appearing. Academics looking at this and seeing a delta between the traditional skills, operations coming in, and now this personal effectiveness. And they're recognizing there's a gap. Similar here, and I'm rushing through this, apologies, because I've been waffling on, but Michelle DeStefano in Legal Upheaval, a great book you should have a look at, she also spots this and says, look, lawyering and legal expertise, it doesn't even make the pyramid, because frankly, that is a given. We don't care about that because it's a given. If you're going to hire lawyers, they should be good at being technically and traditionally good at law. What really adds the value and where you really get the difference and happy clients is when you go up that chain, up the pyramid, and you have people that can help solve problems. So this is something that Michelle DeStefano, who's a Harvard professor, has got in her book, Legal Upheaval. But again, this is a lot of talk, and actions speak louder than words, and it's about time that we took action, because I've heard lots of people say what we need to do. So what a group of people have done, have got together, and there's probably now people representing private practice, GCs, law schools, are all coming together and saying we need to change this. And by November 2021, when the SQE comes in, this is our opportunity to change it and start to create people who are fit for the future. So why do we need it? I'm hoping some of what I've said has given you that, but let's start going into a bit more of a gloomy world. If we don't start doing this now when the opportunity is here, if we don't train lawyers in a different way, we will end up in a position where junior lawyers no longer are necessary. Pretty hard hitting, but that, I think, is the reality. If we are not going to do things differently, someone else will come in, particularly at the junior end, and do it differently. And if we don't have people at the junior end, that makes it much harder to create great leaders of law firms in the future. So there is a real risk here that firms could disappear as a consequence. Ill-prepared and ill-equipped lawyers leads to ill lawyers, and I'm sorry to say I've laboured the point already once. That is a real problem we have to address, and these kind of skills I'm talking about, the openness in particular, will help us address that. And finally, these things are really quite infectious. If we can get these right, they are skills that others will feed off. So how are we going to get into what I like to call the ozone? And I'll take you through this quite quickly because this is where we really want people to get to. Well, we need to own the problem, which is why this group has started to do this, and we need people to be part of this. And so part of this is a pitch to say all of us in this room should get behind this as an idea and a concept, be thinking about it. We need to take this opportunity. It's once in a generation. That's not exaggeration. It's true. We need to be original in how we think about how we can use this opportunity. We need to be open to new ideas. This group needs to be able to start thinking, what could we do? What would it look like if we started changing the entrance to this profession in 10 years' time when the first partners or general counsel come through? What would they look like? And finally, again, I've said it already, let's just be quite positive. Let's try and have fun. People come to work to enjoy themselves. And if people aren't enjoying themselves, we're doing something wrong as leaders in this profession. So really what I'm trying to say, and where I'll close in, is this. This is genuinely a once-in-a-generation opportunity. 30 years the LPC has been in, and it is going to be disappearing. If we continue to do things in the same way we've already done, and simply just say to law schools, who, by the way, are massively on board with this, if we simply say, just do the same thing, we'll call it and badge it something different, we are not preparing ourselves for all of the disruption that is currently taking place in this industry. I'm thinking 10 years, 15 years ahead, not next 12 months, okay? So if we get this right, genuinely start to think about these skills as the skills of the lawyer and the behaviours of the lawyers of the future, I think our future is bright. Ladies and gentlemen, I think our future is the O range. Thank you very much for listening. It's been a pleasure.